Monsanto, ruler of the earth, the air and water too. Have you ever figured what you're gonna do when you find you've poisoned even you?
Michael Hurley is an American musician, songwriter, illustrator, and singer based in the state of Oregon. Born in 1941, Hurley has been writing and recording music and touring the world for more than 50 years, earning accolades for his guitar playing and his originality as a heartfelt, uncompromising artist with a penchant for comedy and an interest in genuine expression. Having primarily lived in border states for most of his life, Hurley has been steadfast in his visits to Canadian cities, and ahead of September 2018 shows with Darren Hanlon in Toronto, Montreal, and a few of the northeastern United States, he and I connected for a talk about his life and times, his musical and visual artistic trajectory, forthcoming new music and releases, and much more. With in-kind support from Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton, and of course, listeners like you who make flexible monthly pledges at patreon.com/creativecontrol, download episodes, and subscribe to this podcast. This is the 425th episode of Creative Control, featuring Michael Hurley, with your host, me, Vish Khanna.
Corn oil and all the soy. I can't even find the junk food that you did not destroy. Alfalfa for the cows, and it's going in the cheese, into the babies in our mother's wombs. Monsanto, please. Monsanto.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Well.
It's nice to speak with you. It's a great honor. First of all, I'm curious, where in the world are you right now?
I'm in Brownsmead, Oregon, which is near Astoria, Oregon.
Oh, okay. Is that where you've been? I've heard that you were living in Portland, but are you living somewhere else now? Is it you're living in Brownsmead?
Right. I've been living in Brownsmead for about 7 years now.
I see. Okay. And what's that community like exactly?
Well, it's not a community here. It's just rural hills.
Oh, I see. It's a rural area.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you, and is that suits you? I assume. Are you a little isolated? Are you a little remote from other people?
No, we got neighbors around. It's like old farms and residences, and on the edge of a forest preserve.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it's kind of like, bit back in the hill.
And is there any particular reason? Sorry, and before that, were you living in Portland?
Not really, not much, but maybe temporarily at times I've been living there. But I do a lot of going there to play music.
I see. Okay. And your property there in Brownsmead, are you on a farm per se?
Not really. It's just a few acres.
Oh, okay. You're not
on the edge of the forest preserve.
You're not growing anything per se.
Not this year. Usually I have a garden. But now I just have a few things I'm growing.
I see. Okay. No, it's I know you like food, and I know you have I believe you have something of an interest in agriculture. I just wasn't sure how.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you do? Okay. Yeah. So what kinds of things do you grow in your garden, if I might ask?
Vegetables.
Vegetables? Those are good. Anything in particular?
Well, I like to grow beans and greens and root vegetables like parsnips and beets and like that sort of.
That sort of stuff. Okay. No, that's.
I like to grow peas. Let's do a lot of peas and beans. I think that's my favorite thing to grow.
That sounds quite delicious, actually. I have to say that sounds pretty good. We have to get that stuff from a crop share here. The farmers come into the city I live in, and we go once a week and we pick all that stuff up. Exactly what you're talking about, the same stuff.
Yeah, and I have all I've got now in my garden, because I toured so much this year. It's been the busiest year of my life. So my garden is fallow, but it's full of mustard greens.
Oh, I see.
Because they survive the winter and just revitalize in the spring.
I see. So this was the hardest touring year of your life, you say. What does that consist of exactly? Were you gone? How many months of the year were you out on the road?
Oh, probably 3 or 4, but the travel was a lot. I went to Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania, and I came back, and then the rest for a while I went to England and Ireland, and I came back, and now I'm about to go off to the northeastern United States, which is something I've done for the last 3 years.
Right.
And I've been going to Toronto, Montreal, Vermont, New York City, Boston, and Rhode Island, and sometimes I go to, I'm in Ohio also.
Right.
And North Carolina.
And sorry, I must jump back a bit though. Have you toured Australia and those places, New Zealand and any of those places before?
Yeah, I toured Australia for the first time in 2016.
Oh, okay.
And then I did also again this year.
It seems to me, I'm a younger person than you, but it seems to me that traveling is getting a bit more cumbersome. It's a little more difficult to do from my perspective. I have children now, actually, so that's another whole other, monkey wrench in the works or whatever. But what about you? Are you finding traveling easier, more difficult?
It's more difficult when airplanes are involved, for sure. And crossing borders, customs. It's kind of unpredictable now what they'll put you through at various international gates.
Yeah. It seems to be harder than it ever has been in some ways. I was reflecting upon the fact that I've actually seen you perform music live in Montreal, Quebec, Sackville, New Brunswick, and Toronto, Ontario. I think those are the 3 places I've seen you play, and those places are quite a distance from one another. It speaks to your dedication and interest in touring here in Canada. I'm curious, is Canada a meaningful place to you personally or artistically?
Very much so. In fact, I'm a big listener to CBC. I frequently have it on every night at my house. I listen to the CBC from 6 o'clock on through all night occasionally.
Are there particular programs you like?
I've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
Even when I lived in Virginia, I was able to get CBC at nighttime in Virginia on AM radio. Mm-hmm. And then I lived in Vermont for about 20 years, ending in the mid-'80s. And everyone in Vermont can get very clear CBC, or at least northern Vermont. So we had that going on. We got the Montreal CBC in the 70s. Listened to it. A lot of good music, Mm-hmm. It's hard to find good music on an AM set.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, AM is mostly talk, as you probably know.
Yeah. So is there anything about so CBC is Canada's national public broadcaster. Is there anything about you mentioned the music. Is there anything in terms of news programming or talk radio that you hear on CBC that compels you to listen? You're getting Canadian perspectives on...
Yeah, it's mainly the talk content.
Oh, okay, that's what you listen to mostly. Okay.
Yeah, I like the human interest pieces on As It Happens, I think, the best. The funny stories, like you tell some funny story and they contact the person involved.
Right. Yeah, that's
pretty good.
That's a good show. Does this speak to anything? I don't know if it speaks to your lack of interest in American media, but I mean, we think up here of the United States as having, a lot of prominent media sources itself, NPR, these kinds of things. Your preference is CBC. Is that just because you prefer our perspective on things, and you maybe get enough of the American one? What is it exactly?
Well, one thing, the news, the Canadian perspective, it's very concerned with what's going on in the United States, but it has a less biased view of it.
Yeah.
Because they don't have so much consequences if they speak the truth.
Right.
And it's more laid back. I'm a slower paced thinker and so forth, and the pace of NPR that's on my nerves. It's a little too speedy.
Oh, I see. Okay, it's too fast. I hear you.
Yeah.
Are there
I'm
any
a country guy? You know.
That's right. You're a country guy. Are there any particular musicians or comedians or visual artists from Canada that mean anything to you or have ever meant anything to you?
Let's see. Stompin' Tom Connor.
Yeah, he's a heroic figure here to some. Stompin' Tom Connors, absolutely. Yeah. What is it about? He was a man of the people kind of guy. He wrote what he observed things and he wrote about them and he tried to speak to the Canadian condition. He resonated with you.
Oh yeah, it's not just highly entertaining. A lot of great songs. First thing I ever heard was on a 45, Bud the Spud from the Big Red Mud.
Yeah. Rolling
down the highway smiling.
Yeah, I could.
That was in the 60s. I first heard that. Then I met some Canadians from Toronto who came down to hear me in Ohio one night, and they did that a lot. They would, if I played anywhere near the border or within range of Toronto, these Canadians would come down, and when they found out I liked Stompin' Tom, they'd bring me Stompin' Tom records.
Oh, cool.
So I got a lot of Stompin' Tom LPs and stuff like this now. Got a nice DVD of a tour he did.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's cool. He's someone who often infused humor in his songs. They were witty. They were good stories, but there's a lot of humor there. I think of you as doing something similar in that vein. Was he an influence to you? I mean, you say you heard a song of his in the 60s, a 45. Did he end up sort of influencing you or inspiring you in any way?
I think more, he just resonates with me. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can see that. Well, where exactly, we've talked a little bit about you're living in Oregon, and I feel like you mentioned when you lived in Virginia. Where are you actually from?
I grew up in eastern Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, which is near, kind of lies between Philadelphia and New York City. Kind of,
sort of close to Canada on some level. Getting, you're a little close there. You seem to always be a little bit close to Canada.
Yeah. I'd like to play more festivals in Canada in the future.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, like, some of our music festivals up here?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've heard, you've played, actually in Sackville I saw you play at Sappy Fest. That's one of our, I think of that as one of our finer music festivals.
Oh, well, that was really a good one.
Is there something about, some artists don't really like playing festivals because it's kind of a traffic jam of music, but is there something about the festival experience that you actually like?
Yeah, I particularly like festivals. You know, it's more of an adventure, you know.
Yeah.
Gigs might take you to a lot of places, but sometimes you just arrive at night and leave in the early morning, and you might think, well, this is a great place to be, but you might not be there even 24 hours.
Yeah, it's true. That is absolutely true.
And often you get there just in time to start to play, and then by the time you're done, all you've got left on your agenda is going to bed and waking up and moving out in the morning.
Yeah, right. Going to the next city.
So even with meeting people and seeing the sights, it's really limited at times.
Yeah. Well, I
traveling and doing gigs.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you there. Well, you mentioned you grew up in eastern Pennsylvania. I'm curious, what or who inspired you to get interested in music and to take it up yourself? I don't actually know that story exactly. Do you have any recollection of that, what it was that triggered your interest in music?
I think it started slowly with my parents being musically inclined. and having a lot of records and singing a lot and partying a lot. Before I even knew that I had a particular interest in music, I was absorbing songs and even singing them occasionally. And after a while, I came into 50s rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And that too, I was about 11 years old when Fats Domino released Ain't That a Shame. And it was, my older sisters were older than I was, and they along with my mother buying records and father bringing records in, and they started buying this rock and roll. And after a while, I started in on it myself. My main obsession when I started buying records was Fats Domino.
I see. Okay, that's fascinating because when you first
tend to get obsessive about things, this and that.
Right. So when did that obsession with Fats Domino turn into something else? Because you, as I recall, or from what I've read, you started recording music when you were around 22 or so, right? 20, just past 20 years old or something?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, something like that. So, and the music you made didn't seem a lot like Fats Domino. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say. I really had a lot of other influences, and because my main quality about my music wasn't playing rock and roll at the time, because I'd been raised on, I guess, more like general pop and folk and jazz, and kind of grew up with like Fats Waller, Jelly Roll Morton records, and and pop music, and old folk music too. Like
yeah,
my parents would party and sing old folk songs and stuff.
So was those parties and those sing-alongs? Is that what inspired you to start trying to play yourself? Yeah,
I took up the guitar actually kind of late in life, being 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I started playing the mandolin, but it was because of rock and roll that I did. Because when I started getting excited about rock and roll, that's when I started playing my first instrument, which was the mandolin.
Hmm. And were you sort of self-taught, or was it from observation? Were there any guitarists that influenced you? I think of you as having a pretty unique and idiosyncratic style, and I'm just curious if that's just from your own exploration of the instrument, or were there players that you were trying to emulate?
Mainly, I was just finding anything that I could play on the guitar, and I started learning from my friends. Like, find a friend who also plays guitar, learn what he knows. There used to be there weren't so many people who played guitar when I started. This was late 50s, and we see somebody with a guitar. Say we're driving around a town and we see somebody walking down the street with a guitar, carrying a guitar case. Then was stop him, have him pull out his guitar, see what he's going to do on his guitar.
As memory serves, that's kind of how you were discovered, right? You were walking down the street carrying a guitar? I
was hitchhiking on the country road, river road where family home was, and I got picked up because I had a guitar with no case, a Stella.
Uh-huh.
And got picked up by Fred Ramsey, who was a folklorist, and he was recording field recordings for Folkways, and he just picked me up probably as curiosity because I had the guitar, and or maybe just because I was his neighbor.
Oh, he recognized you.
I don't know. But as soon as I got in the car, he started asking me about the guitar. What do you play? And I just mostly blues. And I started plonking away, and then he could tell I was a complete amateur immediately. And he said, "Well, if you want to learn to play some blues, come up to my place. I've got some nice old 78s you can listen to." He looks at that blues music.
I see. So that's a very fortuitous situation. He just spotted you, took you up, and then spent some time, and then you ended up making a record for Folkways, right?
Yeah, it took a few years, but it was my first record, and it was recorded in Fred's house.
Right. You tend to like recording in people's homes, if you can, as opposed to studios, right?
Yeah, and now my own home.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, you've got a setup at home.
Yeah, we had a session here last night. Another session last week. Bring people in occasionally, but mostly I just do a 2-track recording of myself, and I can have someone come in maybe if I want to, and add a track or so later.
Okay, so you're actively working on new music.
Yeah, I'm compiling a bunch of songs right now.
I see. Okay. Well, I want to hear more about those in a moment, but the other thing I wanted to ask you about, among other things, was your art. You are renowned for your artwork, your album artwork, your comic books, your characters. Do you have any recollection of where that interest came from?
I just like to draw, and my older sister was really gifted with the facility to do someone's portrait, and it would look very, very recognizably like them. It seemed like some kind of magic, and something I didn't have, but at least it showed me this is something you can do. I mean, this is something that can be done. So that's what started me scrawling.
Right. So
pictures.
Right. And how are you still? Is it something you do often? Are you still illustrating?
Yeah, mostly I do. My creation of paintings is slowed down, but it's speeding up again. And I do album covers and posters, and I do album covers for other people and posters and album art.
Yeah, I assume with your busy tour schedule, it's maybe more difficult to sit down and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that might explain why it's slowed down, but it's picking up again. That's nice to hear. Is there anybody or anything that maybe influenced your style and your approach to what you do?
When I first started doing cartoons, there was Mad Magazine was pretty popular, and there was this guy Jack Davis was one of the illustrators for Mad. I liked his style, but I'd always read comic books growing up. I think that's how I learned how to read. And there was this other artist, Fred Harmon, who did Red Rider, Red Rider and Little Beaver. And he's a great artist, great illustrator. Really knew how to draw horses. Horses? And, yeah.
Huh.
Also, in the elementary schools, I went to many different elementary schools in Pennsylvania, Florida, and California. And there was tradition then to, during all the boring teaching sessions, the boys to draw. And then we'd all draw stuff and pass it around. Mostly what the kids were drawing was war pictures, like a kid would draw a battleship, a whole bunch of airplanes circling around, planes getting shot down, planes firing at the ship, people parachuting out of their planes. And the other theme was cowboys. I think the war theme was like early 50s and stuff. The war theme was much stronger than the cowboy theme, but they were both going on. And some kids even wrote stories. They made up stories and would longhand a page with some kind of adventure story, and we'd pass these things up the aisles,
I see. Okay. So that's fascinating. So you're kind of influenced by your friends in some way and what they were doing.
Yeah, and being in this kind of tradition of you get to school, or if the teacher wasn't there, and on the teacher's desk would be a stack of paper.
Right.
And you just grab a generous number of papers off the teacher's stack, go sit down and start drawing.
Right. Huh. That's fascinating. I'm your practice is fascinating to me generally, just all the things you do. And one of the things that strikes me about your music is that you often re-record and re-release songs in sort of different iterations. And I'm curious, does that signify anything about your relationship to your own music or to recordings? I thought there might be something there, some reason why you choose to do this. Every once in a while, you'll just re-record one of your older songs. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I like to, it kind of changed for me. Some songs I really can't relate to playing them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And other songs become different for me, and I still like to play them, but I'm playing them differently. So to me, that's enough of a difference. I should put it out again. Plus, it might be out of print anyway.
Right.
It might not be available to the next wave of record buyers, which I think every 7 years that there's a different wave of sort of a different culture crew comes on. About every 7 years.
7 years? Where did you come up with that figure? 7. I've never heard 7. Why do you think it's 7 years?
That's just what I think. I don't know.
Well, I think maybe it's every 10 years, maybe, is what I would say. But it's just interesting that you came up with 7.
Well, you might be right.
We're pretty close.
But definitely, by 10 years, there's a big difference.
Yeah. So does that speak to anything about your relationship with the songs? Like, do they say something different to you, or obviously they resonate for you, but they're different, right?
Working with one now, just recorded one now that I recorded it in the 80s, just more elaborated. I think during the 80s, from the 80s on, I always had sort of a different chord arrangement to it,
right.
Slightly different. It gets to a point where I really didn't know what I was doing, I guess. That I'd do something, then I'd forget what I did, and the next time I would play it, I'd do something a little bit different in that place, and then finally come upon an arrangement I really like, and so this is the way it goes.
I see. Are you able to tell us what song you're referring to?
That's Lush Green Trees. I guess you'll see that this year or next year on a record, I guess.
Okay.
But the record it's originally on, you won't see at all because it's out of print on the Fundamental, a label called Fundamental, put it out.
I see. Okay.
Fundamental hasn't put out any records in the last 15, 20 years, I guess.
Yeah.
As far as I know. I mean, I apologize to Fundamental if they are putting out records. I haven't heard from them.
There's a sort of feeling among people who follow you that you are on the fringes a little bit, and I wonder if that. Do you have like measures of success that matter to you per se at this point in your trajectory? I'm just curious if you feel that way. It seems to me you just do your own thing, and it is what it is, or whatever, and you seem content. But I think there is a kind of like we gotta, some of your fans are like, he's the greatest. We got to get behind him. We got to support Michael and spread the word about him, and that's great. That seems fantastic to me. I'm just curious if you have a particular relationship with success that you may have, either resigned yourself to or reconciled yourself with. Can you speak to that?
Well, survival. It's nice not to be doing the 9-to-5 type job 5 days a week, or 6, or even 2 jobs. Mm-hmm. And it's great to do what you love to do. And I think performing is part of my psychological makeup.
Yeah.
Like something I actually need to do from time to time. I play the music compulsively all the time and put songs together, and then I actually need to bring them to the people. I can't just hang out and keep them to myself.
Yeah, I think some of us feel the same way about the work we do. It's just something we have to do at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will do it anyway.
Yeah. Might as well take it to the people,
There was a large period in my life when I wasn't depending on music for a living, but I did it anyway. Mm-hmm. I was still writing songs and playing with my friends, but there was a long time there that I never went out and played gigs.
Right. Are you still an old car guy? I understand you're into old cars. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you have like a collect?
Yeah.
Do you have a collection of them or anything?
No, I just have 2 that I run. Got a '68 Chevrolet Impala. Mm-hmm. I'll let it go for $8,000 right now. If anyone wants.
Oh, you're trying to sell it, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've got a 1973 Dodge Coronet station wagon, which is my daily driver.
Okay.
We call it in the obsession. It's called your daily driver.
Your daily driver. Okay. So do you know why you're? What do you fix them up? You're able to repair them yourself? That kind of thing?
I do a lot of repairs myself, as much as I can, and I've rebuilt a few engines. I don't want to do that anymore.
Right. What is it about cars, old cars even, that speaks to you? I'm just curious. I mean, it's a bygone era in American, industrialization, I suppose. There's kind of a symbolic aspect to it, but what is it about the cars that you like?
For one thing, they're made out of metal. I like that. And I just think they're beautiful. And these days, the cars all seem to look alike. They all seem like sort of plastic bubbles.
Yeah.
And it seems like everyone's car, you see these big highway scenes, these vistas you get, these streams of thousands of cars, and every car looks brand new. Everybody's got a shiny plastic bubble.
Yeah.
And if it gets bumped, all the parts fall out on the highway.
Yeah.
Fenders fall off.
Yeah.
Bumpers falls off. And then they say that's a total, and it doesn't turn me on too much.
Well, I think of you as a progressive person. I'm curious, what do you make of electric cars, hybrids, these kinds of things in this day and age?
Well, they're, got to absorb these things slowly. I rented a Prius one time, and I had fun with it.
But
so sometimes I rent a car. I'll be renting a car on this Northeast tour.
Yeah.
I have fun with them. They're less worry. It's less worry to have a car that you're not afraid will break down on you.
Yeah, sure. No, I guess I just meant in terms of, ecological impact. There seems to be a trend towards hybrids and electric cars, and I know that some of the muscle car or older car aficionados kind of turn up their nose at them because they don't feel like they like the noise, they like the engine, they like burning the gasoline. I just wondered if you had a perspective on that.
Yeah, I'm into that too. So,
all right.
Try to sort of not blow oil all over the place and leak it all over the place, and try to get the engine to function. If I can get many miles per gallon as it's capable of.
Yeah.
And drive that way too.
Yeah. No. Well, that's
take a lot of fuel if you drive sensibly. There's things you should know.
Cruise control, that helps. Cruise control is a big help for fuel consumption. That's my understanding.
My cars don't have that.
The rental cars have them. You ever use it?
I do, occasionally.
Yeah, I find it handy, actually. I was thinking about the last time I saw you play in Toronto at the Transac. You did a newer song. I believe it's called Bad Monsanto. Is that right? What compelled you to write that song? I'm just curious. I mean, it seems pretty obvious given the lyrical content, but for those who haven't heard it, to comment on Monsanto, what compelled you to do that?
Well, for many years, I've been into healthy food, and it seems like Monsanto's industry is poisoning the earth.
Yeah.
And it's making it harder for us to get food that's not actually poisoned. And Monsanto is, the Monsanto Corporation is pretty horrible. And I curated a record of about 6 tunes concerning the Monsanto industry. And I asked all the songwriters I know to write a song about it. And I selected 6 tunes and made a little set out of it. For a while I sold the CD on my merch tables. It's also available on Bandcamp, and it's called Doc, D-O-C, GMO.
Yeah.
Anybody can go to Bandcamp and hear these 6 tunes that gathered together, and one of them I wrote, and that was Bad Monsanto. And I have another one up my sleeve, but I haven't recorded it yet.
Okay.
So new song just deals with Monsanto, and then there's 4 other verses that deal with other social ills.
Yeah. I want to ask about that in a second, but I just wanted to point out among the people on the Doc GMO compilation is Old Man Ludica, Chris Ludica from Nova Scotia, right?
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's an old friend of mine, and I was happy to... How did you connect with him, by the way?
Actually, I think he connected with me. I think maybe he sent me a song. He got wind that I was curating this Monsanto thing.
I see.
But it was also on... After I went to Sackville, and I went on to Nova Scotia, and some folks told me about Chris.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And met him in Wisconsin a couple of years ago at the Jack Pine Jamboree. Yeah, I met him for the first time.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, he's a very gifted songwriter, and his song on this comp is great as well. Again, it's called Doc GMO. It's on Bandcamp. You mentioned that one of your new songs contains verses about various social ills. I must ask you, since you have been around a long time and you've seen a lot of stuff, this current political landscape, I'm curious about two things. One, a lot of people say we haven't seen the likes of what's going on in your country before. I think that's fair to say. I wonder if you have a perspective on what's happening and where it might go. And secondly, I wonder if it is in fact inspiring you to write music and make art and sort of respond to it in that way.
Well, I'm not responding to it too much. I do listen to a lot of the news, but as far as that song that I have up my sleeve, what's it called? Called Be That As It May. Or maybe that's what I could call it. I haven't really called it anything.
Be That As It May.
Police shooting the citizens down. Deals with people buying elections. And it deals with, see what else we got here. Yeah, I guess it's buying the elections, shooting people down for no good reason, and poisoning of the earth, the air, and the water. My main beats, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that you want to speak to these things. I don't feel like as many artists will speak to these things as maybe they could, and perhaps as much as they should. But at the same time, everyone's kind of processing this and trying to respond to it in their own way. So all I can say is thank you for your work on that level. And you're saying you might have a new record or new songs out in the next year or so?
Yeah, probably, maybe even this year. I have a release coming out officially on November 2nd, which is on the Feeding Tube label. And it's called Living Ljubljana.
Okay.
It's a live performance from 1995 in Slovenia, Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Oh, okay.
The trio. I think that was the first time I did such a tour like that with a small band in any European country. It was mostly in Germany, and we went into Austria and Slovenia. And it was 1995, and so that's coming out.
Great. November 2nd, you said?
I'll be released on November 2nd.
Right.
Be officially out there.
Great. Excellent. And where can people go to learn more about you, Michael?
Oh, www.snockonews.net. Snocko is spelled SNOCKONEWS.
Yes, Snock and Snocko, these are recurring sort of motifs, I suppose, in your work. What is the origin of Snock and Snocko?
Snocko was my nickname when I was around 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, running around Bucks County with my pals. I have a tendency to rename just about everybody I know.
Give him a nickname.
Including myself.
Right. It's interesting. It lends a kind of enigmatic quality to you and your work, if I might say. Okay, so people can find you online via that link. Michael, is there a song from, I suppose, almost anywhere in your catalog that we can play for people right now who may want to hear something of yours?
The Portland Water.
Okay, now which version of that song would you like me to play?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Okay.
Come to Portland.
Come to Portland, drink the water, listen to all the versions of this song that you can find. Is that what you're saying?
Come see me play at the Laurel Thirst Public House on the third Friday of the month in Portland.
Okay. That's I appreciate the invitation.
We play there with a four-piece band called the Croakers. Michael Hurley and the Croakers.
Oh, cool. Was there anyone in the band we might know?
You might have heard of Louis Longmire. He plays about 20 gigs a week.
Okay.
You might have heard of Dave Reich, who plays probably 6 gigs a week. And I don't. I play probably on 3 gigs a month when I'm not on one of these tours.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I
probably never heard of me.
We've heard of you, and I've heard of you, and this is The Portland Water by Michael Hurley. Mr. Hurley, this was a great honor and a pleasure. I appreciate all the time you gave me today and for fielding these questions. I look forward to seeing you play live again very soon, and best of luck with everything going forward.
It was nice talking to you.
The Portland water, that's swelling cold, and it swelled my body, but not the soul. Put a call up to Portland on the public telephone. They said it sure is raining here in the state of Oregon. Up in the canyon, looking down in the river, and the wind come blowing, and it make me shiver. Put a call up to Portland on the public telephone. They said it sure is raining here in the state of Oregon. You'll see them engines standing by the water. They say the river, that's the Spirit's daughter. Put a call up to Portland on the public telephone. They said it sure is raining here in the state of Oregon. To the zoo, I saw the puma. I'm going back to Montezuma. Put a call up to Portland on the public telephone. They said it sure is raining here in the state of Oregon. Honey, 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 what you trying to do? Why don't you signal when you are through? Put a call up to Portland on the public telephone. They said it sure is raining here in the state of Oregon.
Very special thanks to Jay Pollard of the Invocation Concert Series in Toronto, not only for bringing Michael Hurley to town on a couple of occasions, but for also asking him to appear on this episode of the show. Thank you to Michael Hurley for the time and for being on this, the 425th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available on all iOS and Android platforms, and also on things like Spotify, YouTube, and Audio Boom as well. If you can't find an episode that you've heard about and you've looked on some of those platforms, but it's not there for some reason, they have limited numbers of shows that they might permit to be on any given feed. But if you're looking for something and you can't find it, the odds are it's on my website, where you can also go to learn more about me and sign up for my regularly scheduled newsletter. The site is myname.com, vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at VishCreative, or follow me at Vishkhanna. You can also listen to a radio show version of Creative Control on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time around the world at CFRU.ca, or on an actual terrestrial radio at 93.3 FM if you're in or near Guelph. Also, please consider visiting patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation in whatever amount you wish and can afford, whatever it is. Please, patreon.com/Creative Control. Special thanks to all the people who have been pledging as of late. It really means a lot, and all the support you can provide in your support and belief in this show, that would be awesome. So again, patreon.com/Creative Control. I'd like to thank the in-kind support I received for this show from the likes of Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, Planet Bean Coffee, Grandad's Donuts, and Planet of Sound. Planet of Sound locations in Toronto and Ottawa. They all help in their own way. Thanks, too, to Jim Guthrie for letting me use the instrumental version of his song The Rest Is Yet to Come to end this show each week. Go to jimguthrie.org to learn more about Jim. And finally, thank you for listening to this show and subscribing to the podcast on your podcast platform and downloading episodes, and hopefully telling your friends to do the same. That really helps and means a lot to me. And I don't have anything else to add at this moment, so I'm going to split, but I will talk to you very, very soon. I hope you're well. Goodbye for now.